Welcome back to the 10th Justin and Tyler Movie Awards, and we are now at one of our main events, one of the more fun, I guess, videos that we do every year, which is we send up the absolute dumpster trash that came out of Hollywood in the big studios this year, and it is our top 5 worst movies of 2023. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do this thing. So Tyler's going to kick us off with his honorable mentions, which means I will close the video with my number 1 worst movie of 2023. Tyler, what are your honorable mentions?
All right, we got Harry Pattern and the Magic Pen, Lady Ballers, Slaughterhouse, Manodrome, Jessica, which is part of the joke of the movie, Freelance, and Confidential Informant.
Ooh, Freelance lands on there.
Yeah, it sucked. Like, it was so generic and kind of boring. Action scenes that were kind of just like, right? It's like, kind of boring. Harry Pattern and the Magic Pen was like, I thought was going to be kind of like a parody of Harry Potter and like kind of clever, but it was just a yeah. I know it's like super low budget, I understand, but it sucked. Lady Ballers, I poo on the left a lot, let's poo on the Daily Wire. Because they really, do you know Lady Ballers?
I'm somewhat familiar with it,
So basically what it is, the first trailer was like the most triggering comedy of 2023, and it was just about dudes who pretend to be girls so they can go dominate chicks in sports, right? Which, like, to be honest, if this had come out, early 2000s, which it could have,
right?
It would have just kind of been maybe even a funny comedy about a bunch of jerks.
Right.
And we kind of would have just been like, that's fine. But because it's attached to the Daily Wire and their whole thing is like this, I'm kind of just like, eh.
Right.
Right? And anyway, that's a whole other thing. So Lady Ballers sucked. Slaughterhouse, that horror movie about a sloth, was just kind of lame, honestly. And it's like, they had like one joke about how slow he kills things, but then he like kind of speeds up. It doesn't make any sense. I actually was expecting a funny like horror comedy from that. Manodrome, just kind of another annoying take on masculinity. It was kind of bland, and then like the other ones aren't even really worth talking about either. In fact, mostly because I don't remember and I don't feel like opening my notes.
Fair enough.
For the honorable mentions, but I remember being sort of excited for Jessica. That's such a fun. I never said it out loud.
So I have 4 honorable mentions this year, which is more than I normally have in this category. And not that all of these were like abjectly horrible movies, but they were definitely movies that just didn't make the grade for sure. Silent Night, which is unfortunate because I was definitely hoping that this didn't land here. The gimmick, of course, being that there's like very little to almost no dialogue in the whole movie. But I think if you're going to have that gimmick and have it work, then it only works with like really pristine action or with a lead that has the charisma to pull it off. And unfortunately, as much as I like Joel Kinnaman, he's not that. At least not in this. So, didn't really work that way. I thought the pacing on it was terrible. It has like the laziest montage scene of all time. It's like 5 minutes and he's a super soldier. So,
I did notice that.
Right? And what was kind of interesting about like the whole movie is a revenge play against this dude where we're not even 100% sure that he did the thing that is the crux of the action. The Pope's Exorcist, another one. Russell Crowe, desperate to launch a franchise like the Da Vinci Code. Just desperate. The whole movie just reeks of like, please give us a franchise. It's a movie where the plot isn't made to feel important at all. The characters are fine, but they're not really remarkable in any way. The scares are okay, the directing is okay, but at this point, if we're only presenting like an okay exorcism movie, it's not gonna cut it. Like, you have to do something special, I think, in that, specifically in that realm, and this doesn't do anything really all that special, and it's kind of unfortunate because I think there's a better movie to be made about Gabrielle Amorth. Cocaine Bear. There's a bear, and it does cocaine, and that's about it.
A premise that's a lot more interesting on paper than that movie.
Totally. It's another instance of everything fun about that movie's in the trailer.
Yeah.
Like, everything. And once the shock and awe wears off, which obviously it will, it's just there, and what's there, to me, isn't even good as, like, that level of, like, shut your brain off fun. Like, I can't even find a path to finding enjoyment on that level with the movie, so that was a huge disappointment for me this year. And Insidious the Red Door, continuing this franchise with the inevitable Dalton Goes to College entry. And it's like Patrick Wilson spending like an hour and a half exploring his LeBron James style I might be a bad dad kink, but this time with demons. Like, it's just like, there's a whole movie's about whether or not Patrick Wilson's a bad dad or not. It just doesn't make any sense. But it's one of those like jump scare every 4 minutes horror movies, which means there's no sense of atmosphere to it at all. There's no suspense. There's no reason to invest in this at all. So that's why it also winds up on my honorable mentions for the worst of the year.
Yeah, so a couple of yours I didn't mind. Like The Pope's Exorcist, there's like a decent gothic atmosphere and whatnot. And I was like kind of entertained by it, which was, but I don't love it or anything. Silent Night, I was disappointed. I didn't hate it. But Wu set pieces are either inspired, like fighting up the stairs, that was cool, or corny. The drugged girlfriend does better than everybody else. The movie didn't prove anything about the gimmick. I was just kind of like, okay, cool, you made a revenge flick that no one said anything.
Yeah.
But there was times where like people should have said something, so it was very noticeable. So I was a little. I liked the movie like a little bit, but I don't love it. And then in terms of Insidious, I'm just gonna say. I'll just read my thing. It's competently made, but it also shows the incessant need to produce sequel after sequel, so it just feels tired. The first Insidious was a fresh horror film that didn't rely on terrible tropes to make an atmospheric, scary film. This lacks any real scares and rehashes elements from the previous movies. The plot reflects the quality of the film. They suppress memories and then have to relive the situation, so it really is just a been there, done that moment. So absolutely. I gave it a 4 out of 10.
That's what I gave it. 4 out of 10.
Which my rating says shit. Like 4.5 is close, but no. I find like more good, but just don't recommend it. But once you hit 4, it's like there's a big drop between 4.5 and 4 for me for some reason. But yeah, so I didn't like some of those picks, but I kind of like some of the other ones, but not enough to really defend them. So my number 5 worst movie of the year of 2023 is Asteroid City.
Wow.
The movie sucks. and not only that, but he made all those short films too. Which also sucked. I hate this movie. Although with that said, you know what? I'm gonna extend an olive branch. I did consider Wes Anderson for directing because I do think it's a very visually stunning film. The set designs and whatnot was really pretty. And I really appreciated that aspect of it. But also, the movie is incredibly boring. And it wants to be so witty, and it huffs and puffs, but doesn't blow the house down,
I love that.
Like, it really is the worst of, like, Wes Anderson. I really think the whole year has been. Like, I know people love it. I get it. People love all the shorts he did. It's like... but all of them are just very much like a tell, don't show, which is really annoying. Right? Like, we'll just tell you, like... Actually, I don't know if this was the short films or Asteroid City, now that I think about it. But it's just like, this guy walked down the street, and then they might move a little bit, but I think that might have been the shorts. But Asteroid City was still... I don't know, man. The quirk didn't work for me. It was a waste of cast, of a really exceptionally talented cast.
Yeah.
I just was watching it, and I remember just being like, oh my god, is this over yet? Why is this movie so boring? Because I've never found his other movies boring, even when I didn't love them.
Right.
Like, I think, like, Rushmore. Like, I didn't love Rushmore. but I don't think I found it like exceptionally boring. I just think it was kind of one of those things where I just don't get it. Like, I don't get it. Like, this is like also, I suppose, and I don't get it, but because everyone loves Wes Anderson.
But much more egregious than an I don't get it. Yeah.
Yeah, so my number 5 starts off with a banger there, I guess, with the old Asteroid City.
Fair enough. My number 5 worst movie of 2023 is going to be a real quick one because I've already talked about it. It's Big George Foreman, the miraculous story of the once and future heavyweight champion of the world. I've already talked about the reasons why I don't like this movie. One thing that I didn't mention from before that I'm going to mention now because ideally this is probably the last time we talk about this movie ever. I really felt like this movie was as focused, if not more so, on like winning souls for the Lord than it was for trying to tell its story, because very clearly it didn't care about historical accuracy when it's telling its story. We talked at the mid-years, I think, about how like there's this whole scene of George Foreman going to Muhammad Ali's house and Muhammad Ali being like, hey man, help me out by beating this guy up for me because I'm scared of him. And it's like, why? Like, you say you're like one of his great friends. Why would you put this scene in the movie about your life? Like, it just seems so weird to me. And again, like, obviously, religion is a big part of George Foreman's life. And I'm not criticizing him for that. I'm not chastising him for it. But I think this movie that's supposed to be telling the story of his life is like as focused on that aspect as anything else. So that's why it winds up, and for all the reasons I talked about before, just like everything about this movie I don't think matches up to par with other movies of this genre. That's why it winds up my number 5.
Crap, you're crapping on my number 1 movie of the year.
Damn. Man, that's never happened, but imagine. Just imagine.
I don't wanna. Could
it have been Hereditary? No, I didn't dislike Hereditary that much.
Like I said, I kind of enjoyed it, but not enough to really defend it.
Right.
Alright, so my number 4 is probably going to be quick as well. Smoking causes coughing. Just characters you can't invest in, just boring. I expect more from a premise of like superhero / Power Rangers, like kind of parody / no, I don't even know if that's necessarily a parody. Just also, I looked it up and it is from France. I mentioned I think it's from France, and it is. So our war on France very much continues with this one.
Fight the good fight, comrades.
It's just funny because like I obviously missed something, because even on Criticker people seem to quite enjoy it. And critics liked it, but I'm watching like, what, did we watch the same movie? Because this is boring and just doesn't use the premise well, and it's not funny, which is another problem. So I don't really know. So yeah, my number 4 is Smoking Causes Coughing.
Interesting. I'm so glad that it's the movie's French.
Yeah.
just so we can have an excuse to continue the war effort. Patreon.com/war on France. Now that we got that taken care of, it's time to continue with the list. And my number 4 worst movie of 2023 is Children of the Corn. And this is a cheater from, I think, like 2020 or something.
Yeah, it was a long.
Like when it was originally made, but it didn't actually get a release until this year. It's a movie about the Children of the Corn that tries to tie in like wonky environmentalism and social messaging with supernatural corn magic, which is definitely a choice. Yeah. Definitely a thing that you could try to do if you are so inclined. This movie is like bafflingly goofy, and it's rotten, but it's not intentionally rotten. You can tell that they were trying to make something of value, and I don't know in whose mind this could have possibly been looked at as something not like unintentionally just rotten. The kids are not creepy. The teens are absolutely feckless, and every decision that they make is like useless. I don't know why they're there. The story is not interesting. Plus, it has a nice cameo from Groot's long-lost cousin as the corn monster. Just this, like, I wanted him to scream out, "I know Groot." Not "I am Groot," but "I know Groot." As this big, not at all intimidating or scary corn monster. This was the one movie this year that I would say I was embarrassed the whole time I was watching it. So, Children of the Corn, my number 4.
I had it to watch and just couldn't bring myself to do it.
Oh, no?
I was like, nah, we ain't doing that.
We ain't doing this, boys.
No. My number 3 is The Weapon.
The Weapon.
Directed by the man, Tony Schiena, who I don't know, but he did double duty because I think he acted in it or something too.
Oh, yes, passion project, I get you.
There's this thing with, like, more indie bad action movies where they just constantly seem to need, like, music playing, and they don't use it when they should. Like, this movie starts off with bombastic music even though nothing is happening. And
gotta love that.
And it happens to the extremes to the point where sometimes it's just hard to hear dialogue. This has horrible action with fake-looking strikes, atrocious acting in general. The story is basically gibberish that piles stuff on, especially in the last 10 minutes, where it introduces things and opens up things for a sequel that nobody wants. And the editing doesn't flow together. There's so many of these bad action movies released every year, and I'll watch a couple, pretty much usually just to, like, flesh out my worst movies and get it over with.
Right.
You know, I'll watch a bunch of bad ones, like, alright, I got it, I'm gonna watch many more bad movies. And The Weapon is just one of them. Just uninspired nonsense. Like, I understand you don't have the budget to have the choreography of some of the great action movies, but this, it's just not doing it for me.
George Foreman was in this movie?
Yeah, he was. You didn't know that? This is a sequel. That's what happens.
My number 3 worst movie of 2023 is Meg 2: The Trench. And it's probably the most aptly named movie of the year because God, does it ever hit the bottom of the ocean and come up smelling like dead fish. So, okay, the first Meg movie with Jason Statham, I didn't love it, but at least it was entertaining. Like there was, it at least kind of had something going for it from an entertainment standpoint, and it wasn't lame. This movie was lame. From, like, frame 1, I'm like, wow, this is trying so hard to at least be as, like, it's trying so hard to be like, I'm as entertaining as the first one, I promise. And it's like, no, you're definitely not. I promise you, in fact, that you are not as entertaining as the first one. Again, this movie is no fun at all. And you can tell that, like, he's getting a paycheck and he's happy he's getting a paycheck and he's just hamming it up. And it just didn't work as much as it did the first time around. Plus, this is like plot armor the movie. He should have died 600 times. I counted. No, like he should have died so many times in this movie, but he can't because that's not the plot. So it's like, it's very obvious in movies like this when plot armor comes into play, and it's like, this is just like plot armor straight time. Like, the whole runtime of this movie is plot armor. And this is what Sharknado would have been if it wasn't made by the Asylum. In other words, it still would have sucked. So, Meg 2, The Trench, my number 3 worst movie of the year. So
I didn't hate the Meg 2, but what's the thing where the screens are also on the wall to the side? What's that called? Is that D-Box? No, that's
no,
not D-Box.
it's...
whatever that is. That was actually my first experience with that.
Oh, okay.
And it mostly wasn't even turned on, but I gotta be honest, there was like parts where he's like going out into the sea and then it does turn on and you can kind of see the expanse of sea.
Right.
Which was like kind of a neat use of it.
Yeah,
but then there'd be other times where it was like they were in a place and then you could tell that it was like jerky and I was like, oh, they haven't figured this out yet. And that's not really the movie's fault per se.
Screen X.
Yeah, Screen X.
Where it does like 270 degrees. Yeah.
Like once they figure out Screen X, I think that might actually be pretty cool. Or movies shot specifically for it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that'd actually be kind of a cool experience, but that really has nothing to do with the Meg 2. It was okay. I don't know, man. The thing is, it's like, you say the Meg 2 is one of the worst movies of the year. But did you see my number 2, Megalodon the Frenzy?
No, I did not.
The Asylum. You queued me up in so many ways, because you mentioned like a Megalodon movie, and then you throw in The Asylum at the end. I mean, look, you know what you're gonna get. Actually, like, Sharknado is maybe one of the best examples of an asylum movie, or like the most positive examples, because the first Sharknado, I can't speak to other ones, so like, it was like okay, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was kind of an interesting.
I think the first Sharknado is the best thing they've ever done by a mile.
I think that's probably true without actually going through and looking. Look, Megalodon the Frenzy, lazy attempt to cash in on the Meg 2, which actually does make money, but who pays for asylum movies? Why? How do they keep making movies? I know they're super low budget, but I don't understand the business strategy. Like, who actually pays for these?
People must be like, it's through, I guess, streaming rights.
You can watch some of them for free on, like, Tubi and stuff, too. Right. Like, even new ones. So, I don't mean maybe they get a deal there or something.
I don't know.
But yeah, so the problem with this movie is that it's limp.
Yeah.
It has a premise where there are multiple megalodons, a massive threat, including baby megalodons. But the movie is either just really bad talking or with bad acting or the dumbest action sequences you'll maybe see this year, where they basically just stand there, which I've criticized a few times. Right? There's no tension. I mean, look, if you've seen an asylum movie and you hate an asylum movie like this guy does, you know what to expect. It's so bad, and it's almost the laziest stuff in film. It's just these like mockbusters and shit. But yeah, Megalodon the Frenzy, the cinematic experience of the year. It's easily the worst Megalodon movie of the year. But it's funny that it came right after your pick.
I both love and hate that I set you up for that.
Yeah. It's funny, as soon as you said Meg 2, I was like, that's really interesting.
I wish I would have set you up for anything of value.
I'll tell you, you see, in an alternate timeline, if you would have seen Megalodon the Frenzy first, you would have been dying for Meg 2. Not that that's how I experienced it, but you would be like, just, please give me Meg 2.
Could be.
Please, because it could be so much worse.
Right.
It has Caroline Williams. Oh, you know who it has? Eric Roberts and Jeff Daniels. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, Jeff.
So,
no.
It does have some names, which I forgot about, which is so funny.
Oh, no.
Better days, champ.
My number 2 worst movie of 2023 is Strays.
Oh, you hate Strays? Oh, this is interesting.
I hated this thing. And like, I don't know, because I know my feelings on this are diametrically opposed to a lot of the audience. Because a lot of the audience really liked this movie.
Right.
And I don't know if everyone was under, like, the hypnosis of dog cute do funny things and voice I know is Will Ferrell. I don't know if people are just, like, under a mystical spell, but, like, it's baffling to me that people looked at this and, like, in some cases quite liked it. This, to me, is, like, the try-hard 14-year-old that's, like, desperate to get attention through shock comedy. That's what this movie struck me as. And I'm sitting there, and, like, I was in a showing. My showing was me and 14 other people, okay? So there's 15 of us in the theater. That was the number of audible laughs. And yeah, I made a joke about this earlier. I did count them. Because what else was I supposed to do? This movie was so terrible, I had to find a way to pass the time. Because I'm not going to walk out. I never...
You paid money.
I paid money, and B, I'm just not the... we try to find bad movies every year, so I'm not going to walk out of a bad movie. No, I'm going to stick this through to the end to find out just how bad I hate this. And it turns out it's the second worst thing that I saw all year. Yeah, Strays was just... From moment one, I was like, this is not going to jive with my personal comedy. And again, this is a me thing. It's not going to jive with my personal comedy whatsoever. And it turns out that's exactly the case, because I don't think I laughed one time in this movie. So that to me is an abject failure as a comedy. So it was my number 2 worst movie of 2023.
This is a man that rated Sausage Party an 8 out of 10. Alright? Fuck you. Okay.
Stand by that goddamn.
No, that movie is exactly what you just described Strays as.
100%.
Okay.
It is.
So we're gonna fight a little bit.
Okay.
I actually thought this movie was funny. Now, it isn't without its criticisms. Some personal ones too. I just kind of hate how he treated the dogs. I know it's a movie and he gets comeuppance, which he should. But I just hate it. And then they also do. They have a bit with bunnies that I'm not a fan of. But that's like personal, right? That's just a thing that I don't know, man. Like, there was definitely some elements of that, like 14-year-olds writing an R-rated movie with the swearing and the whatever. I completely understand that, and I went into this fully expecting to dislike it. But I got a steady flow of like laughter from me, including some big ones that I can't remember. I wish I would write down the specific laughs. And I actually thought the voice acting was good, and yeah, I enjoyed it. 7 out of 10. I don't know if people are saying that this is like one of the best movies of the year. I'm not co-signing that.
No, and it definitely wasn't getting that. But just like the audience scores, I look at them just like that's at least like 60 percentage points too high.
It's not the finest example of like an R-rated like comedy by any means, but it's also like pretty solid. But also it's like, how am I going to argue with you because it's comedy? Like that's such a subjective thing that it's like
true.
Like what do you want me to do? It's like your sense of humor sucks.
Right.
Which makes my sense of humor terrible too because we're friends and we laugh at each other. So,
you're in a real conundrum.
I don't know. I just disagree.
Yeah.
I'll actually defend this one, which we don't usually get a lot in worse movies.
No,
but
it's true.
Yeah, I just think it was funny. I think it did enough, even despite its flaws, to be like a solid comedy. So I'm probably more in line with the audience, I suppose, on this one. I love the pick. Don't get me wrong. And I kind of smiled. Also, when you watch the video, like you'll see that when I smile at one point, right when you're about to stop talking, because I came up with the like he liked sausage.
The sausage party simile. Yeah, fair enough.
Right. But yeah, I don't know, man. I guess that's it. It is like I'll defend your right to make that pick, especially if people like it, and you're just kind of like. No, I'm like, yeah, he's wrong, but yeah.
This was almost. This would have been a great pick for I Don't Get It,
right.
But I knew it was going to be number 2 on this list, so I was like, you know what, that's chewing my food twice.
Yeah,
so.
I felt the way you feel pretty much word for word for Sausage Party. I felt that towards Sausage Party, which is funny because it's like opposite for us.
Yeah.
In regard. So. My number 1 worst movie of 2023 is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Very anticlimactic if you watch the mid-years. If you remember the mid-years at all where I said I rated it a 0, I was like, well, I don't know that you can watch something that's worse than a 0, right?
Right.
And I was like, how can I make Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey number 2? Right? So I concocted a scheme.
He's scheming, folks.
I was scheming. So my plan originally was to break the award and watch all the Asylum movies this year. Right? And then I got 2 movies into this scheme, and I was like, fuck no. Like, I was like, this isn't worth it. We're going with Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Like, but then, like, recently I was like, you know what, though, Megalodon... what is it? The Frenzy? Yeah. The Frenzy is... It might be a worse movie, honestly, because it's so limp and so terrible. Blood and Honey has, like, a little bit of competence within its, like, low-budgetness. Like, just... There's, like, scenes where you're like, that's okay-ish. Like, I had said at the mid-years that maybe it's a 1.5 out of 10, which is still atrocious. But, as I said before, I resent this movie.
Yeah.
You know, I resent it, and that's what kind of puts it to the 0. Now, I'll say this again, even though you might remember this. I've rated 2 other movies a 0. Eye Blink, which is a Yoko Ono short film of an eye blinking.
Yep.
and electrocuting an elephant, which is like, I know a different time where they were like, ooh, look at these cameras. Let's electrocute an elephant. I know, you can't hold it by the standards of, like, the friggin', like, either early 1900s or late 18... Like, it's one, I can't remember the exact year. But I watched it, and I'm like, wow, they electrocuted an elephant. This is awful. Those are the only two movies that got a 0, and those are objectively worse than this. I hate that mine is like the beginning of a trend, which we commented on earlier. I've survived the Seltzer-Freiberg parodies. 50 Shades of Grey. The young adult invasion of movies that couldn't sniff Jennifer Lawrence in the Hunger Games jockstrap.
Yep.
I've survived knowing you for 30 years. But this might be what breaks me. This is my personal hell.
Right.
This idea that now this is helping usher in these terrible adaptions of public domain properties that deserve love and respect. Like Winnie the Pooh deserves love and respect and something to honor it. But yet we get Winnie the Pooh, which is so lazy and uninspired and goofy.
Yeah.
And then something new happened. There was this quote recently from Screen Rant this year. And this is what he said about the, I think it's about, well, it's just about the public domain movies that are coming, like Mickey's Mousetrap, and then all and his Peter Pan movies producing or whatever.
Right.
He's like, I noticed some stuff on a few of the Steamboat Willie projects that they shouldn't have done. We didn't want to go near that character. Some of these new projects are sketchy. They think just because something's fallen in the public domain, you can just make up a version of it and then put it on a market and it's completely fine. It's about to get quite scary and extremely costly. I don't know if any of them are going to, try to make them good. That getting repeated all the time, it won't have the same kind of hit. It doesn't have the same kind of longevity for what we're trying to do. I personally believe the only way that this becomes sustainable for us making films is to really focus on doing a select few, the ones we think are best, and making them have a really high quality. I don't disagree with some of this quote. You know what I mean?
Right.
It is probably pretty sketchy. Like, Disney might be coming down on them, right? You go on to talk about good films and questioning others, but you release this turd. What are you talking about? You are the problem.
Right.
You're not even the symptom.
No.
You're the problem. Right?
You were the first one through the gate, and the first one through the gate always gets bloody.
Yeah.
But, and
they're making a sequel.
To have the audacity to be like, well, good movies. It's like, what do you know about a good movie?
Yeah.
Based off of this, what do you know about what is a good movie and what isn't?
Yeah, like, you're a talentedless hack.
Right.
Like, get away from this stuff.
And we're talking about Reese Frake Waterfield here?
Yeah, something like that. I forgot his name, but that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Even though this guy is, like, my personal nemesis.
Right.
Even though he'll obviously have more success than I do. But nobody get famous one time and they dig this up and they're like, hey, remember that time that you declared war on him? Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
I declare war on all this public domain horse shit. Like,
we will, this segment of these awards, every time we do them, will almost now be dedicated to this absolute cancer within the movie industry.
Yeah, I will watch these movies so I can poop on them, but they do not get any of my money.
No. Oh, God, no.
They will never get a cent. Even if someone's like, hey, let's go see this at the theater, like, I don't know, say Mickey's Mousetrap or the sequel to this, I'm going to be like, no.
Yeah.
I refuse to give that money. It's bad enough I'm giving it time.
You're right.
Now I'm done. Now I'm officially done with this movie. Thank God.
Right.
I can move on from this until next year, because then it'll be something else.
Exactly. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you have just witnessed, or are about to witness,
A breakdown of
a man's mind. No.
Already fragile mind.
Exactly. A movie awards first.
No, don't.
Never happened before. We have a consensus number one.
I mean, I would be happy, but I'm depressed. I can't be happy.
You don't have to chip in anymore on this. You're done with this.
But I do, though. That's what you don't understand.
Hand the ball off to your boy.
I can't. You can't fight this alone. Say your piece, though.
This is one of the 5 biggest pieces of shit that I have ever seen in my life. And I saw Black Rock. Right? Like, I've watched abject pieces of garbage. Rhys Frake Waterfield is so bereft of any original idea or talent that he took one semi-interesting visual idea, which is the shot of the opening of the 100 Acre Woods. And it's like this dark and menacing whatever with like the lower third of menacing music, whatever. He had one interesting visual idea.
Right.
And he decided to build this whole wannabe interesting slasher gore fest with public domain characters that everybody knows, which is just dudes wearing bubblegum suits. Like they just
Winnie
look
the Pooh looks so goofy.
They
the
look
whole time.
Terrible.
He's like looking at it, and it's just like, this is awful.
And it's just like blood all over it, and like I don't know, like Farmer Joe's outfit, and it's like the whole time I'm watching, and you know that Rhys Frake Waterfield was so in love with that shot because he used it like 3 times in the movie. The same shot.
Everyone gets one.
Everybody gets one. Everybody gets it, and everybody gets it 3 times apparently because it's that exact same shot. He just recycles like 3 times in the movie because he's never had an original thought other than that. We've invoked the asylum plenty in this video in particular. This is every bit as bad as the worst of the asylum, and probably much more so. Like, I feel like I've seen the worst the asylum has ever put out, and they ain't as bad as this.
Yeah.
These absolute dummies have the audacity to credit A.A. Milne as a co-writer of this movie. A.A. Milne wants nothing to do with this piece of garbage. But you had the audacity to be like, oh yeah, A.A. Milne's a co-writer of this because we're using their characters.
Is that the original?
This is the original author of Winnie the Pooh. Like,
and it's funny because I think is it Tigger that goes into public domain soon? Because not all of them, I guess, are in the public domain. Which is, I guess, the answer is because I was wondering why some of the characters weren't there, and I guess that's why. I think I think it might be Tigger. I don't remember which.
I think they're only like reference because they don't have to be in the movie because they got eaten.
Yeah.
Like,
I hate this movie.
You, Rhys, and I'm speaking to Rhys. You.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, his name doesn't matter.
I'm talking to you directly at this point. You are the reason why someday this medium will fail. It's you specifically. People like you have gotten into this industry with a complete lack of talent and complete lack of good original ideas.
Yeah.
And you make something so dirt cheap. Like, the only reason this movie is afloat is because of cheap heat.
Right. Yeah.
That's the only reason I was interested in it when I first heard of the concept. You hated the concept from the jump.
Oh, God, yes.
I was at least like, oh, I wonder. That seems like not necessarily a good idea, but it's at least an interesting one. And then I'm like, no. What were you thinking? You made me doubt myself. No one does that. But you did, because I thought your idea had something to it. So, congratulations, you are the worst working director today. So, for the first time ever, consensus number 1, worst movie of 2023, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Eat one.
We don't even get consensus in worst movies very often. I feel like we might have had one.
Maybe one.
I think we had one many years ago. You know what? Coming in today, I didn't. Not that I sat there and thought about what your worst movie would be because that's no fun for me. But I did wonder. I was like, I wonder if he's seen this and what he thinks. So I'm not completely shocked. And I'm sort of happy that it ended this way, but then also not, because I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. I know, like, I'm playing it up. Obviously, I'm not as bothered as I, like, you know, whatever, because it's just a movie, you know? You watch it, you go about your day. I'm not one of these people who's actually gonna, like, fume about this forever, but I do really hate, like, you know, even though some of these properties may not be Disney technically, you know that people know them as Disney, and that's your only thing is like, oh, you see Disney? Look, see it this way now, and it's just, you're lazy, bud.
Yeah.
I hate this so much.
I disrespect you so much I crack my knuckles in conversation about you. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, our worst movies of 2023, including a first-time ever consensus #1. Congratulations, you dirtbag. Now that that's over with, we are going to change clothes because that's the end of our first day of recording for the 10th Justin and Tyler Movie Awards. The next time you see us, we'll be in some different garbs, and we'll be going through not only your choices for best movies of 2023, but our choices for best movies of 2023, our top 30 best movies of this past year. It's the main event. We cannot wait for it. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, if Winnie the Pooh is on your best movies, I'm coming to all of your houses like Jane, Silent Bob at the end of the movie.
Yes.
I'm gonna fly to all of your houses and get the crap kicked out of me because you're probably tougher than me.
I will spend all of my YouTube money to track you down.
I'm looking forward to seeing you guys' picks. In all seriousness, yeah. So I'm looking forward to all this.
Right. We'll see you on the other side with the fans' choice for 2023.